This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to aja.com for all your production and post-production needs. Hi, I'm Gordon Raquel from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com, or of course, follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_U. Every week, we interview a film professional to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by visual effects artist and cinematographer Gary H. Lee, who recently helped create the look for The Magician's Elephant on Netflix. Welcome to the show, Gary.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Now, I guess my first question for you is, you're doing the cinematography for an animation. How does that work? Or how, because when I think of cinematography, I'm thinking on set, setting lights up and everything. So how do you approach it with the animation?
So I think in animation, traditionally, there was a layout department that does, the kind of a 2D layout that coming kind of at the heels of, the storyboard pass of a film. And ever since the beginning of films such as Toy Story and, A Bug's Life and Ants, Shrek, all these 3D animated film that starts to boom. Now we're working in a 3D environment. We're in a kind of a virtual space. So a lot of the job has transitioned from kind of 2D work into now you're in this 3D space. You have a camera that mimic a real world camera in terms of the field of view, in terms of the spatial relationship with your characters. It's almost like a video, like in modern day video game cinematic now that, we'll start placing those cinematic like little figurines around a digital environment and taking the virtual camera to try to capture and stage the actions that will take place for a particular sequence, a scene on the film. So the digital cinematography really has had a history of different names. At first it was just extension of layout at animation studios. In the live action setting, it was called Animatics or Previs. I started my career at Lucasfilm on George Lucas's Star Wars prequels, and they were that was a place that was like the pioneer of really utilizing animatics for kind of the reboot, the prequels of Star Wars. And really, that was also the time where, you have films like, even prior to that, you have like Jurassic Park, you have, the booming of the visual effects industry, digital visual effects industry. So really it was a combination of all of that really kind of had this profession that was doing previs, animatics, layout, and eventually is now being embraced as digital cinematography. When someone like Roger Deakins starts to consult on Pixar films, on Wall-E, and he really kind of opened a conversation for people to kind of lean into that. And I'm heartened by that transition in the industry. So right now, various studios are calling this position, digital cinematographer, and also part of my whole career, even my parents, I'm like, I do previs, I do animatics, and they're like, what is that? And oftentimes, people just think of me as an animator, and in an animated film, there's probably 50, 80 different jobs, and somehow people just all summarize them as animation. But camera operating is definitely a thing that's very real in what we do, and having this kind of the way that people are describing our role really help differentiate, what we do.
I think what attracted me to color correction was the fact that we were like the next stage of cinematography. And the creative side was huge, trying to understand what was wrong with an image, how to balance it, trying to understand how to let the tools do what you want them to do. Where else can the technology go? What else can we do? I'm very interested in trying to mold the image and create the best look possible, and whatever tools are out there, you want to try and latch onto them. I'm Eric Whip, and this is my course on color correction.
Are they, like if we're using Maya or Nuke or whatever software we're using, do they basically just send you the files and then you go and light it, or is there like a meeting with the team, with the different animation artists and the director, and you guys sort of light it and then prepare it as a group? Like, how does that breakdown sort of work?
Sure, that's a very that's one question. That's the answer is continue to evolve at this point. So typically you have in animation process, you have the storyboard that derived from either a screenplay or not a screenplay. And really from that point on, it's like, how are we going to translate the storyboard into actual production shots that we can shoot for the rest of the pipeline? So that's when the layout, previs artists or the digital cinematography will come in, and a lot of it is to work out the camera placement, the spatial relationship, to really define shots for the project. And a lot of it is done in Maya, gray shaded, rudimentary, kind of old school video game look, and not much lighting yet. I think the lighting really could be as good as how the tools were developed over the past decades. I've been doing this for close to 20 years, and at first Maya can only take 8 lights. So you're trying to just utilize 8 lights in very creative ways, and eventually like 16 lights. And also in animation, composing, generating shots, and lighting are 2 completely different processes. You have your previs department, layout department that lays out all the shots, and they go into animation, and months later, once animation is done, then the lighting department begins. So a lot of that process are not combined typically. So that's why, studios such as Pixar or Disney would have director of photography camera, director of photography lighting. They kind of split up cinematography into 2 different parts. But what's becoming really, really interesting today is that you have technology like Unreal Engine that really allows an operator to go in, not just defining your shots, but very within that shot can start to light on kind of a physical level. Unreal Engine calculates lights just like the real world. You can put a car next to a person's face and you get that bounce light. And it's getting extremely exciting that I think for the first time in animation and visual effects, people who are doing previs or visual cinematography are now kind of beginning to operate closer to a traditional cinematographer, that you're setting up your camera and you're also, right after you get your shots, then you spend some time lighting that shot. Now that is very, very feasible. And yeah, that's definitely the direction that the industry is heading. And on the project I'm on right now is totally, taking advantage of that process. And it will be an experiment, but it's one that I very much welcomed. And I think truly it's like now we're getting to the essence of cinematography due to the advancement of technology.
So for this film on Netflix, I'm wondering, like, because the book has drawings in it, so were you going off that for the look or the lighting approach, or did you take other inspiration?
In terms of the Magician's Elephant, that film where we did all the previs and the cinematography still in Maya. And that film, you know, and a lot of animated films typically has almost the production designer is the one that is setting up the lighting keys for the film. A production designer will go and do, you know, a lighting key script that goes from for the whole entire film. So in terms of Magician's Elephant, Max Boas was our production designer who has an incredible eye for color, light. So essentially he, you know, kind of did a lighting script, the color script, and that eventually is been implemented through the lighting department when we're doing the film. And that will be, that's in terms of the process on Magician's Elephant and some projects I've gotten involved in prior. At this moment, I'm at Sony Picture Animation on this project called K-pop Demon Hunter. And that project is going to use a slightly different approach, which is starting to take advantage of Unreal Engine. And I think starting there, it will be a more organic process, a collaboration in terms of light between our department and the lighting department, and with art, and still getting a lot of really, really great reference from the production designer, but able to actually reflect it in very early stages and make adjustments and kind of sandbox it, you know. Yeah.
Now, you worked with the director to create the sort of visual language for the film. So I'm wondering, how would you describe the visual language and how you guys came up with it?
Every film's certainly different beast, you know, from one to another. Some films I've come into, that director has such a specific way to work and has already had a book that's put together, and we just become the executor. In terms of speaking about Magician's Elephant is one of those projects that's really, really collaborative, from top down, and from the leadership of Wendy Rogers and Julia Pister. They've always wanted to hear everyone's voice in terms of what they think about the film. And on the cinematic level, you know, so much of it is dialogue with producer, with the director, the creatives, in terms of what's the essence that we're trying to get out of film. And nowadays I find it really, it's one of the most fun thing is to kind of look at the material, deconstruct it, to see what are the visual opportunities in that movie. For Magician's Elephant, it was an ensemble film. It's all human characters. So Wendy wanted to have it feel more live action, more grounded. Our cameras are not moving in a way that is impossible. They're shooting from human height. And then you look at character dynamics, you look at, you know, in terms of the environment that they're in. As an ensemble film, Peter and Velna kind of live in this Spartan-like lifestyle at a tiny little apartment, and their relationship is opposing. So we'll set up compositions that are kind of quite flat, quite opposing compositions. You know, when we shoot them on single, when they're dialogue, we're putting each character on singles to kind of create that distance between the two characters. Whereas like in Leo and Gloria's apartment, just downstairs from theirs, is meant to, you know, instill this feeling of warmth, casualness. So we will have camera that the placements are much more non-formal. You know, you're not getting the really flat perspective in the back. There's more perspective, and you're getting dirty over the shoulders between character. You're kind of trying to jam as many people in the frame as possible to kind of create that connection. And the like the King and the Countess at the Palace, you know, we shoot it in really formal, centralized composition to just kind of present that formality for these figures. So it's those small choices in the way how we want to move the camera, how we want to compose those shots, that starts to stack up like a visual language for the film that eventually, the way I like to do it is put it into a deck, and then that deck became kind of a camera Bible for the rest of the crew. So whichever story artist that comes on, or layout artist, they can go to that deck and be like, oh, for this sequence in this environment, we should shoot it this way. There is something there, instead of, when you're dealing with a film with thousands of shots, it's very quickly you go to a place where you're just like, oh, want to make every shot looks amazing, from a compositional point of view. But sometimes the thought process behind how you want to do that throughout the film, you need to have some sort of a guide. Otherwise, it just becomes all over the place.
So when you get the script, what do you like? Do you mark it up in a particular way? Do you like make notes about characters? Like you sort of pointed out at one point, with things being more formal, therefore it was more centralized or centered shots. Like, are those notes you put into the script, or is that something that evolves as you talk to the director more?
It's a bit of both. It really is. I think on the script level, I always kind of take my own notes when first reading the film, kind of get a feeling of where this film can go. Always looking for the visual opportunities in that film and try to present it to the director and let the director choose, where they want to go with it. I mean, that's a job of someone who stages camera, is you want to create. For instance, right now, for a film that is meant to feel kind of has that classical feel to it, you want to go with the quite traditional way of shooting it in terms of camera placement, movement, all that. But then you have a modern film, something like K-pop or something that allows you to kind of think about how does a broadcaster hold the camera in like a documentary style, or so you kind of look at a material, you think about places you can go, and then it's about presenting those and having a conversation with director, really just an open creative dialogue until you get to a place and go, oh, this is going to be how we want to shoot it.
Now I have a completely off topic question for you. Is the building that's glowing in the background, is that Taipei 101?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's right.
What, are you a big architecture fan, or is that what is the?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was from Taiwan. I grew up there. I came here when I was 13 years old, and every time I go back, I tend to want to go there to either for myself or take now I have 2 little kids that I would take them. And I don't go, I'm not in Taiwan all that often, so when I do, I enjoy going up there to see just how the land has changed over time. There's always new buildings, there's always like a new skyline. And at one point I was actually going to do a project that's going to be shot at 101, and that thing was, I actually purchased that as a reference to use for this project. But at the end, it was just like a kind of a cool item that I put in the back. I actually set it to a timer that whenever it's glowing, it's like working hours. And then when it's off, you're like, okay, it's time to get off. Yeah.
Now you've mentioned before that you wanted to get into directing and what have you. What kind of films are you wanting to direct and sort of take on as you move forward in your career?
So I've done 2 short films that are like on kind of by the directorial domain. They're both live action films with a lot of animation elements and visual effects. And I think some of that speaks to just the tool sets I've gained over the years. I'm definitely, a huge fan of sci-fi, something that's a little bit out of, stories that allows some out of the world experience, that allows for some animation possibilities. Although I have to say, the older I get, I'm beginning to lean more into like character development content, drama, things that may not require a single visual effects or animation. I find that some films I really learned to enjoy now that I'm older are films that are completely different than the type of films that I work on. But I started this career because of Jurassic Park. I was 13 years old. I saw that film and it kind of blew my mind, and later on, with films like Matrix and, even younger, like Star Wars, and able to kind of participate in George Lucas Star Wars at a young age was kind of like checking off certain, list. And so I always had aspirations to tell stories that are kind of the bigger than life experience. So I'm kind of, it's always a journey. I find that nowadays I watch films that are just pure drama that is riveting, that keeps me at my seat, and yeah, and visual effects is getting easier and easier to do, so it's less special, in my opinion, nowadays. So it really comes down to the core of a good story, and how to tell it. Like Wong Kar-wai's film, is awesome. Some of those just real character moments, character relationships with good cinematography. That's really beautiful.
So I have one last question for you. What would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure film or TV show to watch?
I must say, I think Breaking Bad is a damn good show, and I always just the character development is so strong. I was gonna say Matrix is a film that would, like, the first one that I would always go back to. That would be like my island, film. I had just mentioned that a second ago. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for letting me interview today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And that's it for this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com, or of course follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching. This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to aja.com for all your production and post-production needs.